Everyone talks about dysentery with this game. Why is it always dysentery? Me, it's the cholera I fear. Like, oh gee, it's 9 a.m. and I'm fine. I get a few symptoms by noon, and by 4 o'clock, I'm dead. No thanks. More than 50 years ago, 3rd December 1971, Friday, one of the most influential computer games ever created started its world tour in an 8th grade classroom in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Slowly it gained steam and became perhaps the one game almost everyone who attended school at some point in the 80s until even today played either in class or at home. I say almost because even though I was in school in the 80s and I had more computer access than you can shake a really big stick at throughout almost my entire life, I personally have never played this game in earnest until a couple months ago. How is this possible? Well, stick around and I'll probably not tell you because honestly, I have no idea. Welcome to my channel, Exertech. I am Noriko, and this is my segment on the Oregon Trail. So why am I doing the Oregon Trail? Isn't the version you'll be watching later actually a 1991 re-release on the Apple Macintosh? It's simple, really. The 1991 Macintosh release is the one my wife played when she was in school. And if not for her, I would have never even played this game to begin with, so if you ask me, it seems only fitting. Now, let's try and keep this as info-light as possible. The Oregon Trail was actually the brainchild of a man named Don Rawitsch. I think it was Rawitsch. Rawitsch? Who knows? He was a student teacher for an 8th grade American history class in Minneapolis. He was one of those cool teachers. You know the type. Before reality hits them and they become disillusioned with the entire process. He was excited about the prospect of molding young minds through new and novel approaches. He tried to engage them through various methods, such as performing songs he wrote about battles, holding mock trials, and even dressing up with another instructor as Lewis and Clark and doing a Q&A session. He felt students remembered things better if they were engaged in the material instead of just reading it. For one of his classes, it was on Western expansion, he wanted to try a new approach. He tried to develop a board game with a huge map and a bunch of covered wagon game pieces. Now, at the time, he was sharing an apartment with 2 other student teachers, both who taught math and dabbled in computer programming. They convinced him to drop the board game concept. Instead, they would go on to help him convert the idea to a computer game that he could run remotely in the mainframe using his school's teletype machine. The original game was quite different from what we know now as the Oregon Trail. First of all, it was designed to run on a teletype machine, basically a telecommunications-capable typewriter with a giant spool of paper to feed. This meant no graphics. There was no aiming your mouse and killing every buffalo on screen before carrying back your 100 pounds of meat. Instead, the student had to quickly and accurately type bang or pow. Do it wrong, and you went hungry. It was quite literally a game of resource management, teamwork, and typing prowess. And it was a hit. The kids loved it. Now, if this were a Hollywood movie, this is where someone would realize just what a cash cow they had. They would sell it, market it, or something, and live the rest of their life off the royalties of the over 65 million copies the game has sold. But that's not how it played out. Instead, when their term as student teachers ended, they did the responsible thing. They made a hard copy of the HP Timeshared Basic source code and deleted the program from the university HP 2100 mainframe. Now, for 3 more years, the game sat in a folder in Rawitsch's bedroom desk. After all, it was literally a project he did as a lark in a one-off class while acting as a student teacher. And, sadly, here's where we roll credits. This is where our story ends. With Don Rawitsch's magnum opus laying in a folder in a desk, all alone, waiting for its turn to go to a landfill. Or so I would say if not for a simple twist of fate, because the true hero of the story never actually makes an appearance in the game. Enter rhinovirus, the usual cause of the common cold. See, in October 1974, Don was hired by Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium, aka M.E.C.C. They had a shared library of computer programs. Employees would submit programs they wrote to the library, and the staff would decide if it was worthy of being added to a statewide library for the students. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and he was down with the cold. Major bummer, right? But he had nothing else to do, so he brought a portable teletype terminal home and connected it to the mainframe at work from his kitchen phone and typed the original 1971 code for his game line by line with some modifications in an attempt to make the game more historically accurate. And when both the weekend and his cold were gone, he showed the game to the rest of the staff at M.E.C.C., and they were excited. So, then in 1975, when Oregon was put on the main share library for students, and over the next few years, it became extremely popular. You would expect that here is where Don would get his millions. But sadly, other than the salary he got while he was a student teacher and his wage at M.E.C.C., he never made a penny off the Oregon Trail. Nobody had any idea back then what role computers would play in the future. In play, in education, in life. He was just an educator, and he was sharing an educational tool with other teachers and students. He even shared the source code in an article for Creative Computing magazine for May and June of 1978. From there, so many adaptations were made for almost every platform at the time. I'm looking at you, David All. But for brevity, let's stick with the core M.E.C.C. games. We already mentioned the original game, which there is no known surviving copy. Just a photograph of the three people responsible for it holding the hard copy. But did you know there have been multiple releases across multiple systems through the years? The Apple II in 1978 and 1980, the Atari 8-bit in 1983, the Commodore 64 in 1984. Then, in 1985, M.E.C.C. changed the name from Oregon to Oregon Trail and re-released it for the Apple II, made a direct copy of the game for a 1990 release on MS-DOS, and along with many enhancements, released the port for the Apple Macintosh in 1991. This is the one I will be playing with you, by the way. Finally, they released the Deluxe edition for MS-DOS with mouse support in 1992, along with a Windows version in 1993. Shortly thereafter, the Learning Company took over to produce multiple editions on CD, and throughout the years, more companies joined the fray, diluting the core mechanic more and more with sequels and spin-offs. Now, my particular favorite at this time is the Oregon Trail Steptracker by Gameloft for the Apple Watch. Link in the description below. So, what is the core mechanic of this game? Quite simply put, the object of the game is to guide your family from Independence, Missouri to Oregon's Willamette Valley via covered wagon in 1848. You start out as one of the numerous classes, banker being the easiest and farmer being the most challenging, each granting you a certain amount of starting funds. You purchase your wares, and you set out on a long trek that consists of turns where you play out the events of the game. Now, I'm not going to spoil them here. Instead, we're going to cover them as we encounter them. Now, why did I pick the Macintosh version? Well, other than it being the one my wife played at home when she was young, it is actually the prettiest, even though it's in black and white. It also has more options to choose from, and it is the earliest version of the game released that uses a mouse for the controls. I may have been relatively anti-mouse back in 1991, but nowadays, I take the easy path whenever I can. So, let's get started. It's been about 2.5 weeks since I recorded the intro you just listened to. Why? Well, you may not know this. Actually, I'm sure you do. But we're in the middle of a really massive and exceptionally long heat wave. This means my air conditioner, one of those central air gizmos, has been going on and off for days at completely unpredictable times. And though it keeps it nice in here, it really gets in the way of recording. Anyway, 2 major notes for you. 1, my microphone is in a different position than I used to record before. I want to see both of my screens, and hopefully this will make little difference. And 2, I'll be recording this in sections. Again, this is mostly seamless, but you should know. So, let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is that this is a Macintosh. This is not a PC version. And as you can see here, I'm running System 6.08. When we want to find Oregon Trail, I don't have very many things installed on this. We have Oregon Trail right here. Akagi is just a name that I like to use. Those of you who have played the Oregon Trail Deluxe Edition on the PC will probably recognize this opening screen. This came out before the Deluxe Edition, and I think the Deluxe Edition was heavily influenced by this, or this may have been the prototype for it. I don't really know. But it's semi-animated with different things happening on the screen. There is, unlike the Deluxe Edition, no music. We're going to travel the trail is how we get started. Welcome to the Oregon Trail. You're about to begin a great adventure, traveling the Oregon Trail across the rugged landscape of North America. Your covered wagon, pulled by a team of oxen, will travel from Independence, Missouri to the fertile Willamette Valley of the Oregon Territory, a journey of approximately 2,000 miles. Before you set off on the trail, you must register your name, the names of all the members of your wagon party, and your occupation. After that, you'll need to buy supplies and make other important decisions. Good luck. So here's where we're going to have names, and obviously my name is Noriko. And there's going to be other people in my wagon, and I'm going to just name them after companies that we all know, or most of them after companies that we all know. Atari, Sega, Nintendo, and just because, Bob. Now over here we have occupations. And occupations in the original Oregon Trail as opposed to the Deluxe Edition are a little different. In the original, you could be a banker, a carpenter, or a farmer, as you can see. But in the Deluxe Edition, you have banker, blacksmith, carpenter, doctor, farmer, merchant, saddle maker, and teacher. And if you click help here, it tells you more about them. Bankers, for example, start with all the money and no advantages and no final bonus, where doctors start with a good amount of money and sick or injured people are less likely to die. They also get no bonus. But merchants start with the same amount as doctors, but they have no bonus of advantages. They just have a times 1.5 score. What that means is when you get your final score at the end, everything's tallied up, it multiplies it times 1.5. So if you are playing a banker or a doctor and you get the exact same playthrough as a merchant has, the merchant will come out higher on the score because they have the times 1.5. Blacksmiths start with some bennies. Saddle makers have the same amount of money as blacksmiths and carpenters, but they don't have the ability to repair broken wagon parts. I have no idea why the blacksmith and the carpenter have the exact same bonus. Maybe you want to play one or you want to play the other, and you are unlikely to go for a carpenter because you've been playing Dungeons & Dragons your whole life and blacksmithing sounds cool. Saddle makers, we covered. Farmers, the oxen are less likely to get sick and die, and they have a times 3, and that's the one we're going to be playing. It's the lowest starting cash other than teachers who have the same, but the oxen, I want to keep my oxen alive because I want to try and get to the other end, and also because farmers are the original hard to play occupation of the game. Farmer. So that's what we'll be going with. We go here and we start with farmers. Once we get through choosing our profession and naming everyone, we get sent to the general store and we have to buy some things. And this is a little misleading. I mean, oxen were the primary transport pulling animals of the era. Movies, they usually show you some people riding in a wagon being pulled by horses, but horses were expensive. They were expensive to buy and they were expensive to keep, but oxen, they could survive off of just about anything they could forage. And they cost 20 per. We're going to buy 4 oxen. And sets of clothing we're going to need because if it gets cold, you need clothing to stay warm. Since we're going to not buy many pounds of food, in order to survive, we have to have a good amount of bullets. There's 20 bullets per box. If we buy 20 boxes, we're going to have a lot of bullets. In fact, we're going to have a lot of bullets when we arrive, but that's a good thing. Spare wagon wheels, wagon axles, and wagon tongues. Parts on the wagon can break. If you have spares and you're unable to repair them in the field, you're able to continue going. Otherwise, you can get stuck leaving your wagon behind and just walking with oxen. There's a 50 points you lose for not getting your wagon to the end, by the way. We'll go for 2 wagon wheels, 2 wagon axes, and 2 wagon tongues. We could get up to 3. We only need 2. Now, as far as the food goes, we need some food in order to get out of town. They won't let you leave with no food at all. This is different from the original Oregon Trail where you could leave with no food. It's not recommended to go with low food unless you have a lot of bullets because we're going to be hunting, and we're going to be hunting a lot. Out of the $400, we spent $334. So we buy, and we need to decide when we're going to set off on the trail. If we leave too early, there's not going to be much grass for the oxen to eat. I've not run into this problem. No matter how early I leave, the oxen seem to be fine. I mean, sometimes oxen get sick. Maybe it's because they don't have a lot of food. Sometimes they don't. Now, we can encounter cold weather if we leave too early or too late. If we leave too late, we may not get to Oregon before winter, which can be very dangerous. If we leave at just the right time, there's going to be green grass, for the most part, mild weather. We're going to hunt a lot, which is going to slow us down in the beginning, so we're going to start in March. And this puts us on the starting screen. Okay, here on the starting screen, we're in Independence, Missouri. This is where we leave when we click continue down here. But first, let's cover some of the basics of the game interface. There's a map. The map shows us mountains, rivers, trails, landmarks, and forts. We start here and we end here. And we're going to take a trip, something like this. We'll cross over some rivers. We're going to cross through some mountains. We're going to have some desert. It's going to be fun. Next, there's a guide, and the guide will tell you information about every location we're in. I'm not going to stop and read those for time's sake, but I will give a few seconds so that you can hit pause when you want to in order to read the different, catalog entries, for lack of a better word. There's a status. The status will show you the current supplies that you're carrying and the current health of each member of your party. Rations. We're going to decide how much we want our people to eat. You start with your rations at filling. You can set it for meager, you can set it for bare bones. Basically, they're starving here. They're tightening their belts, for another way of saying it, and here they're eating good meals. And this does affect your ability to keep them healthy. So I suggest always keeping it at filling. In fact, here's the help button. Meals are large and generous at filling, where bare bones, they're very small and everyone stays hungry and your health may suffer. Let's move to buy. Takes you to the general store of any location you are, if they have a general store. Over here we have trade. Trade is where you can get items by trading. Let's say for some reason we have used both of our wagon tongues. So we need to get another wagon tongue just in case one breaks in the field. So we say 1 wagon tongue and okay. Sure, I'll trade you 1 wagon tongue for $8. Is it a deal? Obviously, I don't want to buy one right now. So we'll say no. And let's see if we can get it to say that there are no wagon tongues. Now they want $11. And this person here says nobody here has 1 wagon tongue to spare. So if you get this, nobody has what you want to spare, just go back to trade and try again. Next is talk. Talk gives you information about the game, about the era, and It's mostly flavor text, but again, it can give you information that will help you make it through the game. I suggest paying attention to it. Rest means you can take days to rest, and whenever somebody's sick, you'll see that I most often do that, especially if they're injured. Pace? Well, let's go straight to help. Steady, you travel 8 hours a day and you take many rests and rarely get very tired. Strenuous, you travel 12 hours a day, starting at sunrise and stopping at sunset. You stop to rest only when you must. You finish each day very tired. In grueling, you travel 16 hours a day, starting before sunrise and continuing until dark. You rarely rest and you won't get enough sleep. You finish each day exhausted and your health suffers. I like to go at a strenuous pace unless my people are in ill health. Hunting will show hunting as we go. Now here we have what's called the conditions. You can tell it's sunny right now and it's warm. It can be hot, it can be cold, it can be warm. And it will jog up and down as we go. The distance to the next landmark, and the distance traveled. As I said, I will be doing this in chunks, so I will often be making my decisions at landmarks whether I've got something else I need to do and need to take a pause. The wagon menu here gives you your pace, which you saw I set it for strenuous. The rations are set for filling. I have 20 pounds of food right now. Everyone's health is good and the wagon is not moving. So let's get going. We start our walking. It's March 1st. I'm going to wait till March 2nd. There we go. And we're going to do our first bit of hunting. We're hoping to do our first bit of hunting. Okay, I do not fire on rabbits. They're not worth the cost. Buffalo, on the other hand, are great. Only kill one. We shot one buffalo. We got 519 pounds of food using one bullet, but we're only able to carry 200 pounds of food back to your wagon. You may or may not remember this, but in the original Oregon Trail, you were only able to carry 100 pounds back. We're going to continue walking. We're going to let it go to the 5th of March, and then we're going to hunt again. Oh, look, another buffalo. If you continue to hunt in this area, game will become scarce. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. We want to keep going. Notice that I'm going to pause here to hunt on March 8th. We're going to shoot and kill a buffalo. It's still March 8th, but everyone is resting. Now it's March 9th and March 10th. It takes time every time you stop to hunt. Look at this. We're already at 485 pounds of food. Let's continue. Let's get to March 11th. We're not allowed to hunt near the Kansas River crossing because there are too many people around. So here we are at the Kansas River crossing. So as I said, here's the guide. The Kansas River is a tributary to the Missouri. It is approximately 170 miles long. If you want to read the rest, go ahead and hit pause. Okay, everything else is pretty much the same, except if you click buy, you're going to find you can only buy supplies at forts. If you click trade, you can trade. You can talk to people here, and they'll give you information about the game, about the trail, about important people, things that are good flavor text and important to learn. And I hope that if you play the game, you'll take time to go through them and earn them yourself. Anyway, let's go ahead and go on crossing the river. Now we have to cross the river to continue. The river is currently 620 feet wide and 4.5 feet deep. We could attempt to ford the river, we could caulk the wagon and float it, or we can take a ferry for $5. Attempting to ford the river at 4.5 feet deep is going to cause us to capsize, and we're going to lose things, possibly even lose people. If we caulk the wagon and float it, we have a good chance of getting across, but if we take a ferry for $5, it is a lot safer. So let's take a $5 ferry, and hopefully we'll get across. Okay, at this point, we know we're going to get across. We made it across the river safely. We continue walking, and we're going to hunt. As I said, we're going to hunt as much as possible until we get ourselves the food we need. I missed 2 shots there. The farther away from this point right here, the slower the bullet moves. If something passes behind a tree, the tree will intercept the bullet. This thing is probably all we're going to catch. Oh, here we go. Keep coming, keep coming. Oh, got away. We're almost out of time for hunting. Got a second one. There we go. Now, hopefully that's going to bring us at least 77 pounds. Well, you saw me read it. So we're going to continue. We're going to walk for a little bit, and then we're going to hunt again because we only have 502 pounds of food. More rabbits. I'm not interested in rabbits. There's a buffalo. It walked away before I could center on it. The buffalo would have been all I needed. Now, one thing you can do if you're not running into anything is move. I'm not sure if that does anything more than change your scenery. It probably does not increase the value of the game in the area. Here we go. 320 pounds, we could only bring back 200. We now have 672 pounds, 657 pounds because we ate some. Continue walking. Let's have a look at what it says about the Big Blue River in the catalog. We'll go ahead and talk to somebody. Be careful you don't push the animals too hard. Keep them moving, but set a fair pace. And then we're going to continue. And you'll see that here we're unable to take a ferry. We can either ford it, which 3.5 feet deep will cause us to capsize, or we could caulk the wagon and float it. Let's caulk the wagon and float it, almost like a boat. And again, once we reach this point, we know we're going to be safe. Made it across the river safely. I'm going to walk for a little bit and do some more hunting. Interestingly enough, this game makes it seem like there was food in abundance at this time. And during the era that the game was being played, the game was almost wiped out. People just spent too much time and effort in these wagon trains killing things. And there were so many people on the wagon trains themselves that the food just became scarce. And there were other issues that people had to fight, such as getting lost. If you went out to go hunting, you often were someone who had hardly ever fired a weapon before, if at all, and you're leaving a well-known trail to walk into unfamiliar territory and running the risk of getting lost. And it was very common for people to get lost, often for days or longer, where the train would leave them behind. There we go, more buffalo. It was a really dangerous thing. So this game, though hunting seems to be a good thing, allowing me to produce food where there was no food. I'm just showing you now what happens if you hunt after already hunting. See, there's almost nothing on the screen. Then people often ran the risk of starvation. Let's move and see if it changes anything. So the game really doesn't want you to continue hunting after you've hunted an area once. I've not tried to see what happens if I continue hunting if I was unable to bag anything, though. Let's go ahead and stop hunting. And continue. You see, we're finishing out the resting. Okay, we are now at a place called Fort Kearney. And we'll start here by checking out the guide. And you can see whatever it has to say about Fort Kearney. Then we're going to come over here and take a moment to talk to someone. And then we're going to continue. See, when I can continue and I don't have map up, it doesn't change over to the map automatically. Now we're hunting, hopefully. Oh, there we go, a buffalo. 2 bullets for 200 pounds is considered good in my opinion. Now, something that is really interesting about the history of this is that movies, as I said earlier, often portray people on the trail going along, riding in these covered wagons, basically converted farm wagons, and they're riding in the front seat with reins leading out to horses, and the trail was really very bumpy, very just full of stuff. And riding in the wagon would cause you to be jostled around, thrown around, and sometimes people could get injured if they were riding in a wagon. So instead, the settlers had oxen that were pulling the carts, which, as we covered earlier, are much cheaper, easier to feed on the trail, and they're easier to control than a horse. And they didn't have reins. They would walk alongside. Often the entire family would walk alongside the trail. And one of the largest killers of the children on the trail, other than the diseases that they encountered, often typhoid being one that killed so many children, is children getting trapped underneath the wheels of a cart. They're walking along and they trip and the cart just rolls right over them. That many pounds rolling over a child could easily kill them. I'm just a wonderful mountain of great news today, aren't I? Let's continue. We're trying to hunt as much food as possible before we get to the areas of the game where there's not as much food. You see here we have 1,741 pounds, well, 1,726 after everybody eats for the day, and we're approaching a thing called Chimney Rock. And Chimney Rock was not named Chimney Rock by the settlers or by the wagon trains. It was named much later. But Chimney Rock can be seen for nearly a day before reaching it and nearly a day after leaving it. And it is said that if you did not see Chimney Rock within a week of leaving Fort Kearney, you know you're off the trail. I find that strange because the game gives you another misconception. And the misconception is that you're a solitary wagon out there trying to make your way, making all the decisions by yourself. And by the time that the game is happening, which is 1848, it wasn't just a solitary wagon going along, trying to make decisions, trying to make the right decisions and do the right thing and stay alive. These were wagon trains, often in the style of a traffic jam, moving from east to west with a leader of the wagon train making the decisions with the consent of everyone. Often they would have a committee and they would make their decisions, and people followed. It's the same with the rivers when you're caulking and crossing or deciding to ford or deciding to take a ferry. These were group decisions. They were made by people who knew what they were doing, not by some child sitting at a computer, adult sitting at a computer, or in between, sitting at a computer making decisions, hoping that they're going to get across in one piece. So let's continue to Chimney Rock. If possible, I will stop one more time. Yes. Got away. Lost 2 bullets there. And he turned. You see, when they turn, sometimes because you have to lead your target, they'll turn after you hit the button to fire. Or they'll turn as you're hitting the button to fire and get away. So I fired quite a few bullets, and this is not going to be very much meat. I almost feel like we're being cheated on this one. That's a little better. We might even break 100 pounds worth of meat this time. Nope, 91 pounds. Let's continue to Chimney Rock. And again, the first thing we're going to do here is check the guide, and it's going to tell you about the day before and the day after. And then we'll talk. Chimney Rock by moonlight is awfully sublime. Many Indians came to our wagon with fish to exchange for clothing. We bought a number. They understand swap and no swap. Seems most anxious to get shirts and socks. This is not true. The Native Americans were not interested in clothing. They did not want our shirts. They did not want the socks. They did not want the sweaters. They did not want the coats. They did not want the blankets. What they wanted were guns and bullets. Guns and bullets, which, as you can see, are serving me really well. We shall hunt some more. Hopefully get quite a few. What I wouldn't give for a buffalo right now. I keep wanting to call them bison. We've got 3. Oh, that's one of the big ones. So you can see we now have 454 pounds of meat. Let's continue walking. We've got 1,933, 918 pounds of meat, so we're just going to keep walking. We have reached Fort Laramie. I'm sure Fort Laramie is probably a place that holds a special location in the hearts of many of you who have played this, as Fort Laramie was the location where you would flip the disc over in the original version of the game. When I say original, I'm not talking about the old basic versions. I'm talking about the one you played in school. So let's look at the guide. The guide says that it's an army post, and it was originally called Fort William. Then let's see what it has to say here with talk. These greenhorns riding across the Rockies know nothing about surviving in the mountains. It gets awfully cold up there even in summer. Many a traveler crossing the mountains too late in the year has gotten snowbound and died. He is warning us of the dangers of leaving too late. So we're going to continue from here. And once we get down to 1,800 pounds worth of food, I'm going to do some more hunting. But for now, if I hunt, it's just going to be a waste. And you can see with all the stops we've been doing, the rests caused by hunting, people are doing pretty good. £1,828. 1,813. It is hot, sunny, and now we are going to hunt. Time out. We found 2 wagon wheels, 3 wagon axles, and 1 wagon tongue in a abandoned wagon, which would have been really helpful if we had had the wagon wheel break, but were able to fix it. If we were not able to fix it and had to replace the wagon wheel. So if we look at our status now, we now have 3 wagon wheels, 3 wagon axes, 3 wagon tongues. We still have $61 worth of money because we've not purchased anything, and we've got a lot of bullets to go. Everyone's health is still good. So we're going to continue, and I'm going to hunt because our food dropped below 1,800. I choose the 1,800 as the mark because I don't want to have excess food left over that gets left behind beyond the 200 pounds that I can carry. I almost feel like I should talk to you about the kinds of wagons that were used beyond the standard converted farm wagon. There's a number of different types of wagons that were used. Well, now here we are at Independence Rock, so we'll get back to that in a moment. I find Independence Rock interesting for the graphic here. It shows the wagons circled, And in common movie television parlance, the circling of the wagons means let's defend against the Native Americans. But this is not necessarily the case. The circling of the wagons was more often used in order to make a corral for the oxen and other animals if you had them. In essence, the idea was to make them less likely to stray away. And while I'm on the topic of the ideas that we have from movies and television of how the wagons traveled, we often see them traveling in single file, and that was also not the case. Whenever it was possible, they would spread out in order to avoid choking on each other's dust. Sometimes there were choke points and they had to pass through single file, but it was very, very rare. Anyway, let's go ahead and have a look at the guide. Pause if you want. Then we're going to come over here and talk. I carved my name way up the side of Independence Rock near the top. There are hundreds of names up there. The oldest ones were carved by mountain men and fur trappers. Famous names like Fremont, Bonneville, and Desmet. I hope I pronounced that right. So, let's keep going. We're not going to stop to eat. You've probably seen... I meant we're not going to stop to farm. We're not going to stop to hunt. I play way too many games, and there are way too many ways of saying that concept. So here we are at another landmark called the South Pass. And here at the South Pass, we're going to check the guidebook and then see if somebody wants to talk. And this time it's a Native American, and he is complaining about people moving across their land, which rightfully so. Now, if you look down here where the arrow is pointing, you'll see that the health is now fair. So we're going to take the time to rest for 3 days. Normally I only rest for 2 at a time, but 3 seems reasonable because people have not really rested the rest of the time. The health of everyone is good. While that's going, nobody is injured. It's stopped. We're going to continue. And here we have to decide if we're going to go to Fort Bridger or take the shortcut to the Green River Crossing. The reason to go to Fort Bridger is if you're running low on supplies. I don't need to worry about supplies because, as we just saw, we have got tons of supplies, probably more than should be able to fit inside the wagon to begin with. So let's go ahead and take the shortcut to Green River. And since we have 1,770 pounds of food left, we're going to hunt. See, like I said, that's one of the big ones. 212 pounds. Now we've got 1,948. We can continue. Often you played this game in order to have people you didn't like as the names and watch them die in horrible ways. The most famous being to die of dysentery. And dysentery is no joke. Dysentery comes to you by way of tainted water, and it causes horrible symptoms that make your death just... I don't really want to get into it. But did you know that the majority of the people who took the trail actually did survive? It is estimated that between 315 and 320,000 people traveled the Oregon Trail, and between 4 and 6% of them died along the way. That's between 12,500 to 20,000 people, which means by the end of it, there's one grave for every 200 yards of the trail, which 200 yards is the length of 2 football fields, and most of those were children or the elderly. Anyway, here we are at a place called Green River Crossing. Okay, fair warning, this is the first time that I am continuing. Here at the Green River Crossing, we have the guide, where we see that the Green River is a tributary to the Colorado River flowing south from the Continental Divide along a twisted, rugged path. Go ahead and take time to read that by pausing if you would like. We talk and we find that $5 to ferry us over the Green River, Those ferrymen will make $100 before breakfast. Well, they can have $100 because I don't want to capsize when it comes time to do the river. Now we're going to take some time and rest here because Bob was bit by a snake and I do not want Bob to die. So Bob is well again, but we're resting. And we're going to continue resting the rest of the 5 days because it's good for everybody and the oxen to rest. And speaking of rest, did you know that the pioneers often ate pickles? They ate a lot of pickles, and they didn't know why they ate the pickles. They just knew that the pickles kept them from getting sick. What they didn't realize is that the fresh fruits and vegetables, obviously being hard to come by, being pickled, preserved the vitamin C that was in the fruit and vegetables. And those pickles would keep them safe from things like deficiency disease and scurvy. Anyway, let's continue. We're going to take the ferry. And again, if we get past this point, we know that we're going to make it all the way. We made it safely across the river, and we're going to continue. I hit timeout accidentally. Continue. We've got 1,638 pounds of food, so we are going to stop to hunt. And hopefully we'll get something big like this bison. Did you know that the four most common causes of death on the trail were cholera, wagon accidents, drownings during river crossings, and accidental gunshots, which I mentioned earlier? The average settler had no idea how to operate his firearm. It's commonly believed that a lot of people died from Native American attacks, and this just wasn't so. In fact, in the 20-year period between 1840 and 1860 that the Oregon Trail was in full swing, less than 350 of the settlers were killed by Native Americans. We are coming up on another place. You can see this icon here shows a man leaning over something with something in his hand and a covered wagon. This place is called Soda Springs. Every time I look at these graphics, I think about, with the graphics we have become accustomed to, just how much these people who programmed this game were able to do with black and white. There's a dog, there's the oxen, there's people. It looks like they're washing clothes. Here's the man leaning over and he's getting water in some container. And here's the prairie schooners in the background. Soda Springs is an important landmark and it's a stopping off point on the trail. It gets its name from the alkaline sodium mineral springs you find here. At this point, some people would separate and head southwest to California, and I really wish I could get into how the California Trail worked, let alone how the Mormon Trail worked. But this is a game about the Oregon Trail. See if anybody has anything to say. His job every day is to find wood for the cook fire. So he stores extra pieces under the wagon in a box because they're hard to find, and he gathers buffalo chips to burn when there wasn't any wood. Let's continue. And as you can see here, the distance to our landmark is steadily shrinking. 39 miles, 21 miles. We're almost there. Everyone's health is good. Everything is moving. And it's only June. And now here we are at Fort Hall. Sounds interesting enough. Let's see what it has to say about it. Fort Hall is an outpost on the banks of the Snake River. It was originally a fur trading post founded by Nathaniel Wyleth in 1834. Later, it was bought by the Hudson Bay Company. Ever since, it has served as an important stop along the Oregon Trail where immigrants can rest and buy supplies. Some travelers turn southwest at this point and head for California. They said that about the last place. I guess there were a number of places where you could turn and head to California. Well, friend, this is where we part. I'm bound for California with an imposing desert to cross. Good luck to you. Let's continue. And we're heading along the trail, and you see we're almost down to 1,800 pounds of food again. Oh, this reminds me. Did you know that buffalo chips were also referred to as prairie muffins? Of all things, prairie muffin. And buffalo chips, if you're not sure you know what they are droppings from the buffalo, and they are flammable. I'm sure they don't smell very well. I myself have never experienced it, and I have no desire to experience it. But I do know that many different animal droppings do burn, and they burn well. Now, let me tell you about a man by the name of Ezra Meeker. He's known as the champion of the Oregon Trail because in 1906, when he was 76 years old, he took 2 oxen, a driver, and a dog, and he made his way from his front yard in Puyallup, Washington, to Washington, D.C. His purpose was to preserve and remark the Oregon Trail, which was being obliterated by civilization at the time. And this man lived to be 98 years old. And in his lifetime, he made the journey by ox once more. And then he did it by automobile in 1915. And in 1924, he flew an aircraft along the Oregon Trail. Here we are at Snake River Crossing. As you can see, since Bob was bitten by a snake, I want to take some time to rest here. So I'm going to give everybody 5 days. And while we're resting for 5 days, you can go ahead and pause and see what it has to say about Snake River. And let's go ahead and do our talking portion. Down there between those steep lava gorges, twisting and writhing, is Snake River. So much water and so hard to get to. We've got many miles of desert before Oregon, so be sure to fill up your water kegs for the crossing. Bob is well again. We have finished our time at Snake River, and we're going to continue. With this in mind, we have 1,668 pounds of food. Now, here you can see, instead of having the ability to pay $5 in order to cross the river, we're going to have to hire an Indian to help with 3 sets of clothes. And again, they don't want clothes, they want guns. So he's helping us across, and by that point, we know we've made it across. So far, we have not capsized once, and this is a really good thing. I'm going to set our pace down to steady for a while. This will give us a chance for people to get better in their health. And let's hunt. Let's get ourselves a bear. And bears are not always a lot of food, so we're going to try and get 2 bears. A thief stole 64 bullets from our wagon while we were out hunting. Well, technically it happened before we went on the hunt, but since it happened as I hit the button, then we're just going to go and say it happened on the hunt. No grass for the oxen. Let's hunt some more. My headcanon is they saw the bullets hit the other. Here we go, 246 pounds. And then we continue along to our next very well designed graphic for what we have as a possibility in art. I really find these different displays not only iconic, but very visually pleasing. Now, we are delayed because of heavy fog and there's bad water. Our health is down to fair. While we're here at Fort Boise, we are going to take some time to rest. Let's see what it has to say about Fort Boise. Or is that Fort Boise? Fort Boise was built by the Hudson Bay Company in 1834 as a fur trading outpost. Its name comes from the French word boise, meaning wooded. Okay, so it is Boise. Let's see what they have to say here when we talk to someone. Every night, even though I ache from the day's toils, my head is filled with dreams of the rich farmland of the Willamette Valley. I will build myself a fine, handsome homestead, and I'm certain I'll be rich within 5 years. Let's go ahead and get our resting in. We'll do 4 days. You know, often people that I have talked to think that it was primarily the poor people looking for a better life back west. But that isn't really the case. It was a very expensive thing to travel across the country. It often took a whole year's worth of wages just to buy the supplies to get started. And that's talking about good, settled in, middle class people. What they were looking for was a chance to be their own people and a chance to become even more rich than they already were. The grass is always greener on the other side, kind of thing. Everybody is now good. We rested for 4 days. We're going to continue. Now, I have a friend that I talked to about this game recently, and they told me that they played this when they were in school. It was in a computer that they could only use if they were already completed with all of their work, which means that they believe that this game made them a worse student than they would have been because they were obsessed with playing this game. They weren't interested in getting all of their work done properly and then going off and playing the game. No, what they wanted to do was they wanted to get to the game as soon as possible. So they would sit through class, they would listen to the lecture or whatever, the teacher would hand out the work, and then the teacher would say, "Here you go, do your stuff." And once you have it done, you can go and play on the computer. So she would literally rush through the work as quickly as she possibly could in order to get over to the computer and be the first one on Oregon Trail. Because whoever's first on Oregon Trail gets to decide how things are going to go. Uh-oh, look at the health on my people here. The health on my people is poor. I'm hoping that they get through here so that I can have them rest. Here we go. At Grand Ronde in the Blue Mountain. And here, because you see our status on everybody is poor, we all need rest. I need rest. My family needs rest. So we're going to make sure that we're already traveling at a steady pace. Let's get our rest. We're going to go for 5 days and see how it works. It's August, and I'm hoping that this resting time is not going to hurt us through the mountains. The health is still poor. I want everybody's health to be good, or at least better than fair when we get to the other side. Here we go with fair. We've been resting for a few days. We are going to rest for another 2 days just because I don't want to take off and set out while we're going fair. Probably not going to get the good rest in here. Okay, let's see what the guide has to say. It means it's French for the Great Ring, and it's a river that runs through roughly parallel the Blue Mountains. Since the crossing the Snake at Fort Boise, it's just been mountains and desert. Dust deeper each day, 6 inches at times. No tracks, just clouds of dust. Many cattle choked in the dust after swimming the river, then bled and died. That sounds most disagreeable. Let's go ahead and look at the map, and you can see how far we've gotten. We're almost there to the end. Let's continue. We can head to Walla Walla to buy supplies, or we could take the shortcut to the Dalles. We're going to go to the Dalles. And on this, we're going to keep moving at a fair pace. Get ready to hunt. Hunting will give us hopefully some resting time. And I'm going to hunt a little bit extra. There we go, that's the big one. We're going to rest a little bit here. Then we'll take a couple of steps. And once we've taken a couple of steps, we'll hunt some more. Our health is now good. And with good health, we're going to continue at a steady pace instead of increasing our pace. We're not in competition with anybody here. We're not trying to beat any of our friends speed-wise, so we are not going at grueling. We were only using the pace we were using because I wanted to beat September here. As a person who lives in Oregon, I can tell you it gets really cold here during certain parts of the year. And by the way, friend of mine, if you watch this, I hope you don't mind that I used your story. I kept it kind of trimmed down compared to your version, but I hope that you enjoy hearing it. Here we are at the Dalles. First off, let's go through the guide and notice that the Dalles is the chief embarkation point for rafts heading down the Columbia River toward the Willamette Valley. The raft in this game compared to the real thing is very, very, very different. It was rapids and people did not have a good time. This game, it's a matter of move left, move right with your mouse. My cousin Lydia engaged passage down the Columbia with Indians. A canoe with 17 people and luggage. The wind blew so heavy they had to lay by near dark. High waves came up over their heads. Finally, they made it to shore safely. So here it talks a little bit about how dangerous it could be. Now, we are not going to be taking the rafting. The rafting is a quick way. If I were to take the rafting, our health would stay the same, our rations would stay the same, everything would be fine. The game just changes. It pretty much freezes itself with these little bits of information as the variables. Instead, we're going to continue walking because I like the walking part, and all of you probably did the rafting because the rafting is so much easier. Let's go ahead and do our continue, and we're going to take the Barlow Toll Road. And here we are walking along. Everybody's health is good. Our food left is 1,803. As soon as it drops, I'm going to hunt. Here we are hunting. It is surprising to me just how effective these bullets are when they hit. I don't think that bullets in the real world, who am I kidding? I've been hunting. Bullets in the real world do not just drop an animal immediately like that. It's a very unpretty thing to see. Okay, one of my oxen is sick. I'm going to hope that the oxen can hold on until we get through to the end. We've got 1,913 pounds. 1,898. We'll hunt again. Is there anything there besides rabbit? Because I do not shoot at rabbit. There's an ox. A bison, I mean. Okay, 1,985 pounds. We decided to continue. We were only able to bring back 102 pounds from hunting. We have 1,955 pounds. 4 miles to go. Let's see. We cannot hunt. Can we? Oh, let's hunt. Is there anything out here? I feel like Freddie Mercury should be singing Find Me Somebody to Love. There we go. We brought back 51 pounds. And we continue after resting, and we have reached the Willamette Valley. Wagon score. You arrived on September 28th, 1848, and received the following number of points. 5 people arriving in good health at 500 is 2,500. 1 wagon for 50 points. 4 oxen for 4 points. 9 spare wagon parts at 2 points. 12 sets of clothing at 2 points. 276 bullets divided by 50. That's 5 points, by the way. 1,961 pounds of food divided by 25 is 78. And $51 divided by 5 is 10. That is 2,701 points before the farmer bonus, multiplying it times 3. My score is 8,103. Congratulations, you've made it onto the Oregon Trail list of legends. Please enter your name. And that takes us to the Oregon Trail end screen, which happens to be the start screen for the rest. There's no question that Oregon Trail was one of the most successful franchises in existence. By many standards, it may even be the most successful computer game ever made, having far outlasted them all and influencing the lives of generations. But was it actually a success? Did it do what Rawitsch intended? If you measure your answer by the most simple definition, did it teach children of the hardships many families faced when they were making the dangerous and lengthy trek known as the Oregon Trail? Then yes, I feel it did it admirably. If you're looking for realism, did they actually get an idea, however brief, of the actual life they lived while doing so? Did kids learn of the reasons why one would do this? What they had hoped and dreamed would be at the end? What daily things they endured for what was essentially a pipe dream? No. I feel in the end, all kids learned was it was fun to make jokes about dying from a funny word, dysentery. And even more fun to give people vulgar names so that their classmates would find them when they found their headstones inscribed with "Here lies Doo-Doo Face." But the Oregon Trail lives on to this day. There is a version of it for nearly everything. It has merch galore. It even has a handheld console, which I wish I had, and a card game. Like I said in the intro, I'm even enjoying a walking app for my Apple Watch that tells me how far I've gone on the Oregon Trail since I've installed it. I've made it past Lone Elm, and I'm heading toward the Kansas River. Which is not very Oregon-y of me, is it? Overall, this is a fun game, and I think it deserves its place in history, even if the history it recounts is not entirely accurate. I do not at all regret the time I spent with it. And in the beginning, the frustration I felt in that time was super real. But, like all good things, if you invest time into it, the return is worth it. So right here is where you hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. My content releases are pretty spaced out, but that's because I put a lot of effort into them. I would hate for y'all to miss when one is posted because you didn't get notified. Finally, a special thank you to my wife who turned me on to this game. Just like your suggestions, you were wonderful. Anyway, I'll see you all next time.